day 29. This reading is one that I wrote back when Oprah Winfrey was still on television, to give you a little context. On being a mother. Oprah featured moms on her show a while ago. The two experts who wrote the book were bubbly, sharp, blonde, business-type women who wore chic outfits that had never seen spit-up or spaghetti sauce stains. They rallied the audience into a frenzy of confessions about motherhood, which variously decried the hardships of this first order of creation occupation. I hate the fluids of babies: pee, spit up, spilt milk, snot. I cried the day I drove to the car dealership to buy a minivan. There were days I wanted to send them back to the hell from whence they came. On and on the tales of woe poured from the mouths of devoted parents. Video clips of small kids on bikes, disastrous laundry rooms, stuffed to the gills cars with seats and sippy cups floated by, making one wonder why anyone would sign up for the task of mothering, let alone sustain it for decades. Moms confess things too, like the one who said she didn't want to wake the sleeping baby by stopping the car for a potty break, but she needed to pee so badly she took a Pampers diaper, stuck it between her legs, and let it go as she drove. Yeah, I thought that was way too much information, more than I needed to know about her. There was a surprising lack of joy represented in the discussion of mothering. Mostly being a mom was held up as the hardest job on earth, the most demanding, the most self-sacrificing, the most misunderstood and overlooked work on the planet. A kind of shared martyrdom underdog status united everyone, and Oprah, never having mothered anyone, had to declare that indeed they were right. Mothering equaled sainthood, which we all know implies burning at the stake and smiling through it. With my kids in the room, listening to the pain of childbirth and engorged breasts, the relentlessness of little voices, the demands of the small child's need for food, sleep, and comfort, the annihilation of a woman's identity and sense of self, I couldn't take it anymore. After all, far from being the hardest job in the world, mothering has been the happiest, most satisfying, life-giving, joyful, rewarding, fulfilling, and dare I admit it, easiest job I've ever had. Oh, sure, the hours suck. There are anguishes deeper than the ocean. There are seasons, years of such utter exhaustion you can't imagine ever being rested again. But all of those discomforts are easily and unequivocally overturned by my children themselves. I punched pause on the DVR to set the record straight. Being your mother has been the single greatest joy and privilege of my life, not a burden, not a perennial, unrelenting source of emotional and physical agony, not the hardest job in the world, not the kneecapping blow to my adult individuality, nor has it been the thankless, underappreciated, most overlooked profession these mothers would have you believe. In fact, my sense of personhood, identity, and self-knowledge have grown more through mothering than any business I've started, any degree I've earned, any relationship I've pursued. I thank you for being the best people to ever happen to me. Then I spewed in bullet style the privileges and unique joys that came with mothering them, all 5 of them, each one popping into my life like a fresh daisy every 2 years for 10 years. Cuddling. Being your mom meant I got to cuddle someone nonstop for 12 years while sleeping with at least one of you at a time, nursing you, carrying you, holding you, helping you in and out of car seats and backpacking you. Those cuddles turned into powerful bear hugs as you became teens and adults. Sleeping together. There is nothing more divine than a baby who falls asleep on your chest while you fall asleep, and the whole world stops while mother and tiny child become fused as one content, quiet, shared being. No meditation, yoga, prayer circle, private retreat has ever come close to providing me with the depth of peace, pleasure, and abiding hope that sleeping with a baby you has given me. Playing. Board games and hopscotch, dress-ups, face paint, finger paint, walks in the woods, trips to the zoo, picking up bugs, rolling down hills, blowing bubbles, eating too many cookies, watching Arthur on PBS, rewatching Disney movies, cards, chasing a dog in the backyard, trampoline jumping, creek splashing, snowman building, skiing, middle of the night slumber parties, bike rides, soccer in the backyard, soccer on the official fields, ultimate frisbee. What adult gets to do any of this on his or her 9-to-5 job? Talk about luxury. Conversation. Oh, it starts off good. Why do bubbles float? How did I get red hair? Why doesn't Santa Claus visit Moroccans too? But boy, does it keep getting better. I've learned about human rights, veganism, role-playing games, Shakespeare, Klingon, fashion, exercise, lacrosse, birds, fantasy novels, conspiracy theories, atheism, feminism, linguistics, alternative monetary systems for world peace, serious, and more by talking to my kids. Mothering is the job that means taking the dog and kids for a walk in the woods is on task. It's the one where tea times and picnics are considered achievements worth trumpeting to friends and family. It's the job where even on bad days, someone tells you, "Hey, I love you, Mom," and then hugs you so tightly you believe it. There is no comparison to the jobs I've had in business and writing. Sure, affirmation and personal achievement are nice, but they are nothing like the bond that comes from the devotion of loving people who live every day looking for you to see them for who they are. I've found that the easiest thing in the world is to love my kids. All it takes is entering into their lives on their terms and giving all I've got. I get it all back and more. Yes, there have been nights where I cried myself to sleep over a nonstop crying toddler or a teenager's emotional pain. There are times when I feel out of control and invisible and fearful for my child's future or welfare. But the rewards of mothering so far outweigh any of its challenges. I can't relate to the repeated refrains of how hard I have it simply because I chose to have 5 kids. Instead, I just feel perennially lucky that my lifestyle has included such richness, tenderness, and connection to immortality through my children. I think it's time we blew the whistle. Mothering isn't a job. It's a privilege. Quote of the day. I love this. Perfect timing, especially after getting 3 hours of sleep last night because my youngest was up sick and coughing all night. I'm so tired, but I would never in a million years trade being a mother for anything else in the world. Kristen Yost. Sustaining thought. Your kids are yours, and you're their mom. What a privilege. So let's talk about this. Because the danger of ever making these comparison lists is that you'll be in one season or the other. Either the one where you're like, why on earth did I ever do this thing? Why did I have 5 kids? Why did I have 1? Or you're in the phase where you get tears in your eyes every time you see them all laying around sprawled on the floor listening to you read. Or you've just successfully written a beautiful piece with one of your kids and they had a breakthrough. There is so much emotion in mothering. There was a period of my life when I was pregnant. Liam was a cry it all night long kind of baby if he wasn't with me, and I had a bedwetter. So 5 kids basically, right? Because I had 1 in utero, so it was hard to sleep. 1 who was still breastfeeding and he was like, we call him the koala bear. He wouldn't let go of me. So we tried to have him sleep separately because I was getting no sleep and I was pregnant and falling apart and trying to homeschool. Some of you have lived this life. And on top of it, one of the other kids was a bedwetter. So I would, in the middle of the night, be stripping sheets, comforting the crying child who woke up soaking wet. Then the baby would cry, and I would have a baby kicking inside of me. Have you all lived this? And then I had to get up and be creative with homeschool. Is it any wonder I resorted to a schedule and tried to get everyone on some kind of one page? This is part of mothering, and it's the part that makes it hard. And it's legitimate to admire the challenge and then pat yourself on the back for surviving it. What I was objecting to when I was watching this television exploration is the one-sidedness of the complaints. In other words, the way that they admired being mothers was through how hard it was. There wasn't an equal portion of that show dedicated to the unique joys and privileges of mothering. And I know every mother in that room loved their kids, That is certainly not up for debate, but it needs celebration because our children are listening and our own hearts are listening. Part of the way that we get to experience motherhood as joyful is to count up the many ways it is joyful. One of the ways our children know we love them is if they believe that that interaction that we have with them every day nourishes us. Who wants to be the responsible party that your life is miserable? What child wants that understanding of their intrusion into your life? So it's really important that even though we need a little, groan and moan session with our peers, when we're with our kids, when we're broadcasting, I think it's important to also be honest about why we like doing it. I mean, why would you have 6 babies if you didn't like being a mother? You don't sign up for this unless you love your kids and love the job. So make a list today. Start paying attention to the ways that mothering has changed your life. At the time that this DVR special was on, I wrote that piece a couple years later, but when it was on, I was in the throes of this deep Charlotte Mason fascination. And what was so apparent to me was how awesome my life was. I mean, do I really think it's harder to be a homeschooling Charlotte Mason mother than a coal miner in West Virginia? Really? Do I think it's harder than being a trucker? I mean, I just don't think so. I think people who are on the front lines of combat in our military have a harder job than I do. Getting to, pour juice and wake up in the middle of the night to change sheets and then watch a movie, read a fabulous book, and encourage my children in their times tables is really not hard. Not by the scale of what some jobs demand of people. So it's the hardest job on the planet, I feel like is an overcompensation. In fact, I would even say it's this. It's a weird way of minimizing it. It's a weird way of minimizing it. In other words, if we think of sort of the story of womanhood for all time, when we decide to overvalue motherhood, part of the reason that is going on is it's sort of, I hate to use this language, but let me explain it so that you understand. It's almost anti-feminist. It's almost like when you put a woman on a pedestal. You know how men who are like big conglomerate corporation owners, and they'll say, oh, I really married up. I married this woman who's even better than me. There's no risk in the room. When a man says that, his ego isn't at risk. If a woman were to say, I married up, she sounds like she's demeaning herself because most people always assume that that's the case. So men are trying to equalize the playing field when they say, I married up. Because everybody already knows, quote unquote, the man is better. So he's just being a good guy by noticing how nice she is. Vice versa. Have you ever noticed when you clean the kitchen, you make the house all nice? I mean, you might have a husband who notices, but by and large, that's what you do when you're a stay-at-home wife/mother. And then when a husband cleans the counter, they create whole memes about it with pictures, and they talk about how awesome he is. And some husbands even want you to thank them. Like, what, we're supposed to throw a parade because you clean the kitchen? But it's not their traditional role, so they get all this acclaim, right? So here's what happens when people talk about how hard mothering is. They're trying to value the job. They're trying to give us back some credibility for this thing that's been taken for granted for centuries. And they're trying to say, oh, I get it. This is valuable. But I say this, instead of valuing it for its challenge, which then makes it sound like drudgery, then makes us sound like we're idiots for doing it, how about valuing it for its awesome contribution, both to society and to you and to your kids? The home is the training ground for a revolution in culture. You know that, don't you? That's the challenge of mothering. Not wiping snotty noses. You can hire daycare workers to do that. That's not why you homeschool. That's not why you had 5 kids. You are actually changing the future. You are saying, enough with how it used to be. I have hope and vision for the future, and I have so much ego and self-esteem, I'm the one who's going to make it happen. Now that's a vision of mothering I can get behind. And that competes with Coca-Cola. You got it? Yes, I will repeat that. Mothering, homeschooling is saying, I have such a big ego. I am so confident in my powers that the children I release on the world are going to be a part of changing the entire way we operate, the entire culture, whatever that means to you. You are tired of the old way, right? You're sick of school. You're sick of the culture. We've spent all week talking about it. And you want to be a part of a revolution that says, I am adequate to incite that change. I can do it. And I think I'm the best person for this job. I don't think other people are good for this job. I'm not going to hire the hourly daycare worker, the preschool teacher, the local school system, because I have so much confidence that what I can offer my children outweighs all of that. That's why I picked this job, this career, this vocation. You got it? So when we're having these conversations on Oprah, or the next time you're interviewed by NPR, would you please mention this? Would you mention the secret reason we're all in this? It's not about, oh, I just want to save the family money, or I don't really like how they teach math. That's not why you did this. The sheer pleasure of your children drove you to stay home. And then you caught a vision for how their lives would be so much richer if they had you 24 hours a day. Guiding, directing, thinking about, being passionate about, offering them empathy, forgiveness, love, vision, enthusiasm, admiration, all the things you crave from your parents, and you are now giving them to your kids. And in the midst of that, you are helping them become better human beings. Don't we need some better human beings on the planet? My goodness, right now in the United States, there are 2.5 million homeschooling families, and that number grows every year. If we assign 2 kids to each of those families, and you know these are homeschoolers, the average might actually be 3 kids, but if we only assign 2, that's 5 million children that we are releasing into the world in all of the different capacities. And they are going to bring with them whatever it is you gave them. That creates change. You know, I was listening to a physics scientist the other day, and he was talking about the nature of physics. I know nothing, so I'm not going to repeat his big construction, but here's what he said at the end, because it reminded me of something I'd learned in grad school. He talked about tiny increments of change, and I want to leave you with this, because this changed my life. I was in grad school for theology in the middle 2000s, like 2003 to 7, and one of the professors who was the most profoundly influential people in my life, because of this one statement, said the following. I was in his office. I was kind of in a, I don't even know how to explain it. I was sort of in a free fall of faith in humanity, in the planet, in religion, in politics. Like I had lost faith. You know, I'd always been one of those idealists who believed in everything that I believed in really deeply, and I felt like there was a shattering going on. If I ever write that biography, it'll be like the great unraveling or the great shattering. I was shattering. And here was this professor who had been at the G summit, whatever that is, you know, the G6 in Europe. He met with Bono. When Bono came to town, he met with him to deal with the AIDS crisis and almost didn't have time to meet with him. He's like that kind of guy, you know, like he's done some very big things in his life. And I was looking at the landscape of the globe and really feeling discouraged. And I went to him and I said, Professor Buchanan, and this is kind of a cheeky thing to say to someone with a PhD, and he's kind of a bigwig, and I was lucky to even get, you know, an hour of his time. I said, I'm really discouraged. And I want to understand how you keep going. Because, I mean, let's be honest, you're working here at Xavier. I mean, how much are you actually getting done that's making any difference in the whole world? Can you believe I said that to him? But I was that deeply discouraged that someone with all of his powers still wasn't seeing the fruit of the things he believed in, right? Like, he's contributing, but is it actually making the difference? I want difference. I want the world to be better, right? How is that happening? I couldn't see it. And here's what he said that mirrored this physicist that I heard this week, and it sort of called it all back. He said this. He said, Julie, think of a hurricane system. Did you know that if we could change the direction of a hurricane by a fraction of a degree, it could miss landfall? That this massive system with one small degree change can completely change course. It doesn't take moving the whole thing. It takes one tiny degree. And then Dr. Buchanan brought up the principle this physicist mentioned this week that I heard. And that is that the tiniest incremental change affects an entire system. This is a physics principle. And I know somebody out there knows what it is, and you can put it in the comments. It's not the big changes. It's the tiniest shift, the tiniest perspective, that one little step, one movement can affect the whole. And he said, Julie, I live every day to make a tiny shift. And you know what? That's what teaching is. That's what it is. So when you think about this tiny movement of homeschooling that started in the 1970s and where it is today and who's being released in the world, I mean, it makes me cry. If I think about my own children, I have a son right now who is wanting to dedicate his life to human rights. The work he's doing that I couldn't do, it's incredible to me. So hang in there. Like, this is an amazing job, and you can't see the fruit yet. But it's coming. Wiping the noses is part of that job. And there will be those moments of absolute sheer crisis. But even those moments are different because of who you are, you know? I mean, I've had friends who've had kids in prison who were homeschooled, and then in prison, they've had to be different people because they come from a different family background. Like, I don't want you to think that it means it all turns out. Not all of it turns out the way you imagine. But what you are creating is different. What you are creating in your children is different. And you are the right person for the job, even if today it feels like you aren't. And wiping noses and cleaning up after babies isn't what the job is. That would be like saying a CEO is a person who Xeroxes paper, you know? Like, is a person who talks on a phone. Talking on a phone is the means to the end. Cleaning the house is a means to the end. You don't need to be a pro at house cleaning to prove your credentials as a homeschooling mother. Brandy says, borderline weeping here, listening to your heart and watching my 6-year-old eat their waffle. My 6 eat their waffles. This is holy and sacred work we moms are doing. Completely. So would you, from now on, if someone asks you, why do you homeschool? You don't have to just, I've talked this week about going, Michelle Obama, right? Go low to go high. Like, you don't have to trumpet yourself in like, oh, I hate the school system. That's not it, right? That isn't it. It's not because you hate the school system. You went through the school system. What it is, and I mean, some of you might have reason to hate it, but what I'm saying is the vast majority of homeschoolers don't hate the school system. That's not the issue. What it really is that you have this sort of bright, shiny vision that your connection to your kids can be the primary connection, and it can create the kind of good in them that will make them the people that make the contribution to the world that they wouldn't make if they came through the system. That's all it is. It's all it is. And it's huge. And that is the biggest task on the planet. Let's just go out on that. I mean, honestly, mothers the world over create the foundation for who their kids will become. It happens in the home. It happens in the home. So when you travel and you go on that, church mission trip, or you join an NGO like, Doctors Without Borders, and you go to these other cultures, and people love to say, I was in the third world, they didn't even have, running water, and they all seem so happy, which is a little bit condescending because they would love running water. They're not happy in spite of, they're just being human beings within the context they were raised in. But part of what people are tapping into is the lie in our culture, which says you are not a successful person until you've remodeled the running water. That's the alert. And guess what? Being a mother isn't about remodeling the kitchen. It's not about making sure your children have the right cubby holes for their toys. And when we walk into a developing country and we see people having bonded connection with their children without all the fake trappings that the West thinks are necessary, we are momentarily reminded that the point of our lives wasn't the remodeled kitchen and the cubbies for the books. The point of our lives was for connection. And somehow, stripped of all that, we are moved again that mothers and children have a bond regardless of their consumption, of their infrastructure, of their political system. That's what moves us. You get it? And it happens everywhere. And it happens with and without school. Those of you who are friends of mine on Facebook, and even if you're not, you can go to my Facebook page. All of my posts are public. I posted last week a Schools for Equality video. My son's girlfriend is an Indian. She's a lawyer, and she started a nonprofit in Delhi, in multiple states now, where she is teaching children all about gender equality, and it is beautiful. Go watch it, because what are they doing? These kids are sitting on the floor in classrooms with blackboards and white chalk, okay? And she's doing better work there than we're getting done here with our, 3M systems in the schools. So let's just drop all this stuff about how hard it is, and I have a sleeping baby in the car, and then I hated buying my minivan. Are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me? Who cares what you drive? You've got precious cargo. We don't care what vehicle you transport your children in with perfectly functioning infrastructure in America or UK or Australia, Canada. I mean, come on. You guys live in the best places on the planet. It's not about that. It's this other thing. It's this fundamental thing. You have the opportunity to shape how your kids treat people for the rest of their lives. And if everybody could treat people better, we'd be better people. We wouldn't be in this bloodbath this month, in this country, in this election. We'd raise better people, that's what we're doing. That's why we're doing it. Yeah, we are part of the revolution. When I was young, I only ever wanted to be, right? I went to some conference years ago, back when I was extremely religious. It was 1983. And they were telling us how we were the next generation that was going to change the world. And, I believed them. But every generation gets told that. And then we make incremental, little tiny change, because we bring with us the seeds of whatever that was, that thing that caught our imaginations and changed us. So I'm not saying the revolution we're bringing is going to be obvious. It's going to be in individual human beings. If your children can go into the world and be more humane, if they can be more open to a variety of people, if they can come with the power of self-starting, and I can learn anything, and I know how to collaborate, if they can go into the world knowing who they are and not what the corporation tells them, these are awesome human beings. And I'll tell you what, I have met so many adult homeschooled kids now, and I just love them. Some of you are in the Homeschool Alliance and on this page right now. I love you. Even those of you who grew up in families where you're rejecting the basic premise of how they chose to homeschool you. The fact that you know you can do that, The fact that you would get up off that mat and say, I can do homeschooling a little better. I admire the heck out of that. I just think that's awesome. And there's just this secret part of me that thinks it's a little bit because your parents had an idealistic vision. Yeah, maybe it failed spectacularly. But back when they started, you had to be kind of crazy to do it. There were so few people homeschooling in the 70s and the early 80s. You know, give them credit for at least daring to dream differently, even when they make these huge mistakes. And some of them, you read the stories and you're just like, oh my gosh, what was wrong with you? But there was a little tiny piece that was right. And those adult kids, some of them are really awesome. I mean, the majority I meet are really awesome. Really awesome. And I just admire the heck out of you for taking on this job. It is just so not easy. It's, yeah. It is so complicated. You are wearing so many hats, doing so many things, running so many systems simultaneously, all with this desire to do a good job by your children, you know, to release amazing quality human beings into the world. It's fabulous. One of my best friends in the homeschooling world here in Cincinnati over the years, I remember her saying something. She said, you know, she's great. Ohio is great. I come from LA. So Los Angeles is all idealists. All idealists. We all think we're going to change the world, right? Like that's an LA thing. Then I moved to Ohio. And they taught me that that's not helpful. I love Ohio so much. It has been so healthy for me. So this really good friend said to me, you know, Julie, I'm not trying to change the world. I'm trying to raise decent citizens. And I thought, it was a relief. When she said that, I went, oh my gosh, I can make mistakes. I can make mistakes because I'm actually trying to raise decent citizens. But guess what? A decent citizen in a group is going to change the world. So it's both. So for those of you who are idealistic, who need to like grab onto the kite strings of a big vision that's, you know, going to take you parasailing, you're changing the world. And for those of you who are like, come on, Julie, we're not changing the world. That's right. You're raising one decent citizen at a time. That is your only job. Okay? And it's the best job on the planet. I mean, kind of, don't you think? Like, really, seriously, we get to play with Play-Doh. We get to snuggle on the couch. We can watch movies. We get to jot down the amazing things our kids say and then admire them for years to come. I mean, that's pretty good gig, right? And when you get really frustrated, you can just like go to the zoo. You can take a nature walk. You can change gears. You can call a friend and say, help, I'm drowning. Can we just meet at the park and have a picnic? I mean, that's a fantastic job. Water cooler talk, you know, on Facebook. You get to create your own blog and showcase how awesome you are and maybe earn some money on the side. I mean, come on. Come on. This is a great gig. It's, shh, don't tell too many people. Let's keep it our little secret. All right. Let me make sure there are no questions in here. I didn't mean to get into the yelling, but I'm telling you what, this is my favorite topic because I admire the heck out of all of you. So let's close, shall we? Live honestly, write bravely, and mother confidently. You are doing an amazing job, and your kids are becoming amazing human beings. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for putting out quality people into the world. Love you. Mwah.